Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university. Welcome back to State of Wellbeing. I'm Caitlin Walters, the Wellbeing Specialist, and joining me today is Abram. Abram, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm Abram. I'm a student at SDSU. I'm a second-year senior, and I am majoring in business economics, entrepreneurial studies, and then I am minoring in accounting.
Awesome. So this is a part of our financial well-being series. Tell me a little bit about what you plan to do with all of those things that you're studying.
Sure. I did take kind of a curveball after my freshman year. I wanted to go into private equity and, whether that be venture capital or angel funds. I kind of took a turn with that and then wanted to go down into a financial advising route. So really my majors and my minor don't really match up with what I want to do, but I find that okay with me wanting to go down into financial advising because I don't think you can have enough information to help your clients with. So I believe that knowing business economics and accounting and entrepreneurship will all be really beneficial. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think most people who know me would probably say that financial wellness is maybe not an area that I'm an expert in. And so I guess I'm just curious, what kind of sparked that passion for you? What made you interested in this field?
Well, it sounds very cliche, but I just kind of want to help people, I want to show people what's right and wrong, and I want to be able to teach them in that way so then they can live their best life. Because when I found out how easy it was to be financially successful and that it doesn't have to be some really complex, long pathway, just everything in life started working a lot easier for me, and I felt more confident. And I think that's the way that you find financial wellness. It's being confident that you know what you're doing, aside from all of the stuff that you can learn and find out, and especially see on the internet. It can be kind of just a cluster mess when you're going onto the internet and finding all this information. All you have to do is just look stuff up, and you'll have one side chirping about what's right on this side, and then you'll have the other side chirping about, what's right on this side, and you start questioning a lot of things. And I know students, from my perspective, and young adults get very overwhelmed. So, you don't really know which way to go for information, and oftentimes you turn to relatives or friends or family, and it's just, who can you really trust? And so that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that that's such a huge piece these days, just with like all the information that's available on TikTok. I see this a lot more on like the physical wellness side, where like they're like, oh, do this, don't do this, eat this, don't eat this. How do you kind of determine what is, a trusted source when it comes to like financial information and financial literacy information?
Yeah, I think there's one part that's difficult about that, but also you're saying that like a lot of the time what's right. Like with nutrition, I know nutritionists could tell you have to eat a healthy diet. All of a sudden you're eating fast food every day. What's right, but it's so difficult to stay on the path. And that is the same way with finance. So with finance, you could hear the right thing, but at the same time, it is so hard to keep your behavior right and to stay on that path, like to budget correctly and to save money and, not to go out with your friends for dinner every single weekend. And it's just so difficult to stay on that path. And so I don't think it's always who you can turn to for perfect financial advice, but it's also sticking to it. So a lot of people hear good financial advice from, say, I would like to promote my grandparents. I think grandparents have a really, really exceptional way of living life. They especially just took their path away from debt, and they wanted to live life and just be super risk adverse, which I kind of admire in that way, in which a lot of young adults are risk seeking in a way. So they try to hit things head on, and they're always trying to, come up with the best new scheme to make a whole bunch of money in investments, But I just like to follow my grandparents, in which I can't be as risk adverse as them. I don't really truly believe in that. But taking the blend from that and listening to what they say and their saving and spending habits is just something I really admire.
So I know you're involved in some clubs on campus. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the clubs that you're involved in and what other extracurriculars you're doing on campus?
Yeah, so I have been a part of the CEO club, which is an entrepreneurship club on campus. I was just a member for that, but that one's a really nice one. But I guess I could expand more on investment club, which I am the vice president of. And we're taking a turn, or I would like to believe we're taking a little bit of a turn from what is typical in investment club, which is a lot of stock market stuff and learning about stocks in general and funds of that sort. And I came in not trying to change everything, but I found that a lot of students really want to know a lot about personal finance and where they can, invest their money for the next year or so without, needing it for some sort of emergency. But at the same time, they could have an emergency come up and they want to have a certain amount of interest on it, so then they're not putting it into just a flat savings account. So it's trying to teach them what exactly they should do with their money in general, and not necessarily trying to teach them the specifics of finding a perfect stock that is guaranteed to go up. It's kind of a change in that such. And so it's trying to teach them kind of the more personal finance of investment blended with some of the more experienced members who really love to talk about the stock market. So
would you recommend, like, if someone was maybe pretty inexperienced with that, is that something that they could come and check out? Could they attend a meeting? What does that look like?
Yeah, so a part of the student, I believe it's called the Student Expo, Student Engage Expo.
Student Engagement Expo.
Yep. So we brought in a lot of freshmen in that way. We didn't have that crazy of a turnover from last year to this year, so we brought in a lot of new students, and I would say that we do have a lot of people that are younger and not as experienced. I mean, there shouldn't be offense taken to that. I think everybody should begin somewhere. And so anybody that's really just trying to learn about the stock market and general investing, it's just a lot of fun to be in there. I mean, it's just really collaborative, and we do our investment competition with paper money, and we just learn about the stock market without taking thousands of dollars loss just right off the gate,
I think that's a really great resource and an easy way to kind of get your toes wet and, like, test it out and see what it's like, and maybe learn a little bit more about what you may be able to do in the future when you do have a large income that you're able to, or not even a large income, but when you have an income that you're able to put towards things like that. So how do you personally define financial wellness? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but do you want to tell me a little bit more about what financial wellness means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think people misconstrue the idea that financial wellness is just completely separate from general wellness. I mean, it seems like a lot of the behavior that people follow with general wellness kind of just imitates with financial wellness. So it's making sure that you have a plan, and especially have a set goal, and then you're either on your way to hitting that goal, or I guess you're at it, So I feel like you can never have too many goals. So I never believe that you're truly at it, but it's just setting the goals and knowing what you want and then planning for it. And I believe that's what I do, and I think that's the perfect way of looking at it.
I also think I like that you say, that people think of it separate, but it shouldn't necessarily be separate from other dimensions of wellness. I also think, so we recently added digital wellness to our dimensions that we use here on campus. And I think of, digital wellness impacts all these different areas of your overall well-being. But I also think financial wellness can impact all the other different areas of your overall well-being as well. That stress when you feel like you're not making ends meet. And like the fact that not having that balance there can actually impact, your mental well-being. It can impact your social well-being. I think that it goes beyond just itself, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about financial stress while in college. I think this is a topic that a lot of students would say that they've faced at some point. I talk about this a lot in the different episodes that we've recorded, but our ACHA College Health Survey that we do every 2 years, this last year reported back that 43.8% of students said they had problems or challenges with finances in the last 12 months. Do you think that that's pretty accurate?
I don't really know exactly what they define as, them struggling with their finances, but I would say yes, it's probably true. I mean, I believe based on statistics, about a majority of the U.S. population lives paycheck to paycheck, so it's not deterring from what people are seeing in the everyday life. But I mean, it's not crazy surprising to me.
I'm sure it's not. The other thing I wanted to point out too is that of students surveyed, around 50% who responded said they had faced some form of food insecurity while they're here at school. And I think that that also kind of goes back to that financial wellness of being able to make sure that we're balancing our funds in a way that we can still, have and provide the basic necessities that we need each day. I think back to, I did a presentation once where we do some self-assessment, and someone was surprised when it said that they had high financial wellness. And they said, I don't understand how that could be possible. I don't have any money. And I think it kind of comes back to that. Like, I think sometimes when we feel like we don't have any money, then like, why bother worrying about like all of these other things? You know what I mean? Like, why like set goals for finances when we're like, well, I don't have any income or I don't have any money. And I think sometimes that stress of feeling like that financial wellness isn't achievable for you because you don't have, the income that you think you need to get to that point. It's not necessarily about income. It's about setting goals, like you said, and really planning for your future.
Correct. I think a little cheat code is budgeting. I don't want to be a crazy stickler on it, but I find it just very interesting to do my own budget. But it just builds a lot of confidence. And playing around with a retirement calculator, I know, sounds really abnormal, but it is a lot of fun because you can start seeing that it doesn't take a lot of money invested, especially as a young adult, a college student, to become wealthy in the future. And so I find it a lot of fun to do those things. And then it also just contributes to my goal, in which I can see and visualize, hey, this is actually all I need to do in order to hit this goal. And so the, $500 a month invested that I would put in, say on a $60,000, $70,000 income coming out of college, I mean, it's not as much, and that budget can show you that you can implement it pretty easily. I mean, like, having the budget completed feels like you got a raise compared to not having one,
What does budgeting look like for you as a college student, if you don't mind talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there aren't really that many expenses for me, and I'm not a professional in it. I mean, I'm not paying for a whole bunch of insurances. I mean, I have my set ones already, like car insurance, But for the most part, it just looks like getting the meals every day and then cutting spending everywhere else, just not buying those things on Amazon. I mean, I just recently figured out how easy it is to go onto Amazon and you click buy, and it's like, wow, I didn't know I actually bought that already. I forgot my card was in there. So it's just taking note of those things and going to the store and then buying not the most expensive foods and stuff like that. Just being very conscious of what you're spending your money on.
Yeah, my husband and I have very different philosophies on grocery store shopping. I think it's really good to like have a meal plan for the week and go in and get all the items you need at one point. And his philosophy is more of like, I'm going to go every day so that I can get the items that I want for today. And I just think you end up over purchasing when you do that, because you go in and you see something like, oh, that sounds good. Or maybe you're hungry one day and you go in and you're like, I'm going to get this extra snack. And so I think even just like having a written down grocery list of like, this is what I need. Anything that's not on this list, I don't need it, right? Going in with like a plan before you start grabbing things and put them in your cart.
Yeah, I believe that like naturally, if you're going to be spending more money in the store, they put the milk in the back, so then you go buy. We've all heard that before. But if you just go in with a plan, which is what I do, I meal plan my food for about 4 days out, 5 days out, and just preparing it in that way, one, keeps it more fresh, and then two, I can see exactly what I'm spending my money on. So it works very nicely.
Do you have any other ways or unique ways that you save money while you're in school? I know it sounds like it's a lot of discipline for you, but is there anything else that you do or any ways that you've seen that help you?
I would say yes, actually. I would say if I'm going out to try to buy something, or especially on Amazon, when that you actually have time to make a decision on a purchase, I would say I have to check two boxes before I buy it. It's one, if I still want this item after 1 week, which proves that I actually desire it. And then two, if I'm going to buy it, am I just going to buy it to please someone else or to try to impress someone else? And if I can check those two boxes and make sure I'm not doing those things, then yes, I would say it's an okay purchase.
I think that's a great way to think about it. In the episode I recorded the other day, was talking about how in November I took a month off from social media. I just deleted all my social media and just kind of did a digital cleanse. And I noticed that I saved so much money because I wasn't seeing things on Instagram that were like, oh, I kind of like that. I like those shoes. And it's not even that it's like necessarily ads or even like promotions. It's just like you're seeing all these things and you're like, well, that person has that and I like that jacket, or and even sometimes ads. Like sometimes I'll see ads where it's like some, I'm trying to think like any ads really, like you'll see them and it's not that I necessarily buy that specific item, but it's in my mind and I'm thinking about it. And then within the next week, I might have like found either that same version or a different version of it and I've purchased it, right? And so I found even just like taking a step back from social media helped me save money because I just wasn't like seeing items all the time.
Yeah, the product placement is absurd. The advertisements are absurd, and I did the same thing. I only have maybe just one social media platform just for contact with friends. I did the whole cut things off, but I didn't stop after 1-2 months. I just stopped entirely, and I've been going with it. And it's not really a burden, and it's not something I really talk about all that much because it just feels natural not to have all those social media things.
Yeah, I think like setting, I think I'm just going to use just one. I think a lot of times too, like how often do we see or hear something going viral on TikTok and then suddenly you'll see it, all over the place. Everybody's got the same water bottle or everybody has the same like perfume or, and obviously like I see a lot of like chapsticks or things that like, this is the best smelling perfume, this is the best chapstick, and it goes viral on TikTok and then suddenly you see everybody has it and everybody's been purchasing it and it'll sell out pretty quickly too. And so I think just being conscious of like you said, like, am I getting this because I'm trying to impress someone? Am I getting this because I actually really want it after a week or two, right?
Yep, absolutely. And you know what? I think this could go back to what like my grandparents' philosophy is. I mean, like, not to get totally like an economic side of it, but the GDP per capita per person, so back in the day, our grandparents and any older people had less income to live by, and they weren't going out and buying all these crazy useless things. But nowadays we're still, I guess, supposedly just as, if not more, broke in a sense, in which we're spending way too much money on these things and these really good advertisements getting us to buy these things. It's just, if we can follow the way that we were, I guess, raised by our parents and our parents were raised by their parents, so following what our grandparents did and their philosophy of buying things, I think we could live so much better of a life in a sense that we'll have more flexible income to buy things,
Yeah, I think that's great. And like maybe just challenging yourself, like I'm going to go a month without purchasing something online, or you know what I mean? Like just setting some small goals to start with, but yeah, trying to go back to that mentality of we purchase what we need, not what we want necessarily. And not that purchasing something that you want is always bad, but it can turn bad when it becomes like that, like, I don't know if you see this very often, but I know I hear it sometimes where it's like, it's that little like, oh, it's my self-care. It's my little treat for the end, for studying really hard or for doing this X, Y, or Z. And when that becomes like your go-to reward for yourself is that you're always, purchasing something or spending money in some way, I think that could become kind of that like toxic cycle of self-reward. Okay. Any other unique ways that you can think of that you like to save money while you're in school?
Actually, no, I don't really think so. Not off the top of my head.
I think that something that Lorna mentioned in the last episode too was just if you are going to go out, making sure that you go out with just cash instead of taking a card out. Then that way you can kind of set your budget of I only have $15 to spend tonight, so I have to keep my spending under $15, whether that's, going out to dinner or going out to a movie, whatever that might be. But actually budgeting for yourself in a physical way by like creating a barrier to getting that money. Even maybe just like you mentioned on Amazon, your card's already linked there. Even just the step of removing your card from online payment options so that you have to like physically get up and go get the card if you really want to purchase it. And sometimes that can be an actual deterrent, right? Like if you're like, oh, never mind, my card's in the other room, I don't want to get up and go get it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that strategy for Amazon before, or online purchases in general. So MIT did some brain studies in which they were starting to measure the effects of credit cards and I guess debit cards as well, and the effect that it has on people. So they took into account like the reward system, which is stimulating to the brain, and then also the just swiping the card and how easy of a purchase it is, and hearing that ding and it goes through. It releases the same dopamine that something like an amphetamine would give off. So it's really interesting to see that. And so I do really agree with you that bringing cash would be really easy, and you could do it when you're going out, so you can set that little budget without actually, over purchasing on stuff.
Yeah, and when it's gone, it's gone. You kind of talked about it a little bit, just you like to think back to your grandparents, but who else do you go to for financial advice?
Aside from parents and I guess supposedly relatives, I mean, it's just a lot of online searching, and I know that sounds terrible and it sounds intimidating to a lot of people, but it's also reading books, listening to podcasts, and doing those things, but also realizing that not everything is going to be perfect on there. So I guess the first time I read a finance book, I thought everything on it was going to be perfect and true, and it was going to be everything was going to fit perfectly for my plan in life, which is just not true. It's first setting your goal and then also trying to hit it in a way which you're able to look up questions on Google or Safari, and then you check out what other people have done. And then you kind of get a blend of a whole bunch of sides, and you take everything with a grain of salt. I think you should be expected to be a little disappointed that you won't have the answer to everything right away. And that's the way I look about it, and I just do a whole bunch of research on one thing.
I like that. Do you have any favorite podcasts or books that you've read or listened to?
I do tend to listen to quite a bit of Dave Ramsey, but it's also listening to and blending in ideas from life coaches. I think life coaches in a way can help with finance and setting the goals, because I also do believe that sound like a broken record, but the goal setting is very important. So life coaches are really good, and then just reading a whole bunch of books on different topics. Like I just recently read a book on negotiating, which it was called Never Split the Difference, and it was an amazing book. It teaches you about everyday negotiating, and you'll start to see that just about everything is negotiating. I mean, in finance in general, you'll start seeing that you're going to have to buy a car at some point. You're going to have to buy a house, and you don't want to spend $5,000 too much on that new car just because you're not capable of negotiating anything.
Well, and I even think too about, you said you're a senior and even going on to your first career, realizing that you are often able to negotiate, maybe not necessarily the salary, but maybe different parts of the offer or the package that comes through to you, and understanding that you can do that, and that, that you shouldn't always just settle for the first thing that's offered to you. Is there something you wish that college students were more aware of when it comes to finances?
I would say not everything has to be as complex as you think it is. I think finance is a little bit more simple than people believe it to be. I think when people hear finance, they oftentimes get overwhelmed if they're not in the finance world themselves or within business. And oftentimes they'll start looking things up and then they'll get super overwhelmed and they'll just quit entirely and give up, you know. So it's just knowing that it's a lot more simple than you think and that investments don't have to be super complex.
Yeah, and I think just like starting where you're at, like even if maybe last week you didn't budget very well, maybe you got sucked into a bunch of Black Friday deals. I know I did. Like you can always start where you are, and it's not, you don't have to be perfect at it, but at least putting some effort into setting some goals and making progress towards those goals, I think is a great place to start at any age. Because certainly if you can develop those skills at this age when you're still in college, once you get out of college and you start having a more income because you've got your first career going, I think it is really helpful to have those solid skills in place, because it's much harder to like change those up as you get older when you're kind of like stuck in your ways. So I think just starting where you're at right now and build those skills up now.
Yeah, because the best way to start investing is to start 5 years ago. And the second best way is to start this afternoon. So I completely agree, and I don't think it's ever too late for someone to get started.
Okay, Abram, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it was really valuable to hear your perspective, and I think just helpful for students to hear that there are other students out there that are interested in financial wellness and that there are tools here on campus for you and there's groups that you can get involved in. So thank you so much for coming by and talking to us today.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.